guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Pat O'Sullivan.
So I've got a couple of things that I want to talk about before we get into today's episode. I'm a little bit worried because the one thing is a little extensive, and we might need to cover it on an entirely new episode, but I literally just learned about it like 2 hours ago.
Okay.
So one thing I wanted to mention was I read this article, and it was about this girl in Brazil who is currently crying blood tears. And so that was pretty cool. You don't hear much about blood tears these days. It's a legit medical condition. It's actually pretty easily treatable. It's just that they have to figure out what the cause is. And they're currently, it's, real time. So they're currently trying to figure that out. But just look up Brazilian 15-year-old blood tears, and hopefully you won't find some weird porn.
It's called Hameo Lacaria, and I know I totally butchered that name, but whatever.
It's dead now.
Yeah. It's crying blood tears.
It is. It's a condition, right? It's really, other people have had it and they have those weird blood tears. I think the first time I saw something like that was on like Ripley's Believe It or Not. And I talked about somebody who had that condition, and I remember just like it was like old black and white footage, and maybe it was like a nun type of person. I can't remember exactly. Really horrifying, but just fucking blood shooting from the person's eyes just all over the place. So it's pretty gnarly. I think that's cool. I don't think I'd want to treat that condition. I would make money off of it.
Right. Put them in a cage and poke them with a stick till they cry.
Yeah. I mean, right. I think it would be really interesting. Just freak people out. I'd go to every church. Why? I don't know. I'm a heathen. That's why. But no, I thought that was something of note that I could, mention this week. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is, exciting for me. It's another fucking rabbit hole, but it's significant. An FBI document was just declassified, and it's about Nikola Tesla. Oh,
okay.
And it says that he is not human. Of course, he's an alien. It's a 64-page document. So I have to read through the whole thing. But not just that. I also, during, finding this new document out, I found out that there is a lady named Margaret Storm. And Margaret Storm wrote a book about Tesla. And the book is basically all about how he's an alien. The book, I believe, came out in 1958. And it's all about him being an alien, and all about how she was given some type of device that was made by Tesla that explains to her how to have interplanetary communication. And it's all weird. So it's all new to me. This is a new, like I said, a new venture, because I literally just found out about this, and and I hate that this keeps happening to me during the podcast days. But so we might have to cover this more extensively on another episode. But what, you got any thoughts on that? Or
so, I'm looking at this proposed FBI document now, because you Google it and it pops up right away.
Right.
And there's so much of this that I would just need to fact check. This is some of the craziest shit that I've ever seen. I can't believe I'm just hearing about this now.
Right.
Basically, I mean, I'm scanning through it real quick because I'm trying to pay attention to you.
Sure.
But I'm just stuff that it looks like there's some type of full-scale operation of flying saucers over American areas July 1st, and this will be done in 3 phases. It looks like there was some kind of plan that they were trying to put out, and that there's something about Nikola Tesla and the space people, his connection to the occult. The White Sands incident. I always love it when you're reading FBI documents and they mention the occult, and you're like, oh boy.
Right. So it's like, is there something? But like I said, the interesting thing, I don't think the document talks about Margaret Storm at all. That's kind of another a separate subject. So like her claims and like what she was doing. So the weird thing about that is that just from the little bit I had read, again, just like you said, I really didn't have time to fact check it because it's so new and there's so much. But with her, so she wrote this book about Tesla, and it's called Return of the Doves, or Return to the Doves, or something like that. It's weird. But the so she comes out with this book, and the only 9,000 copies were printed. Return of the Dove is what it's called. Only 9,000 copies were printed initially, and then all of those copies were taken off the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
And then she disappeared. Like, nobody really knows how she died or what happened to her. If she's even, I mean, she probably is not still alive, but I guess she could be. Um, so, and then eventually it was reprinted. You can now purchase it. It's a little pricey. It's not terrible. It's like almost $30. But yeah, it just, like I said, a whole new rabbit hole, because
Right. I'm looking at a lot of FBI files about his death in 1943,
yeah.
and his connection to the death ray. All kinds of crazy shit. Wow, this is a cool rabbit hole to go down.
Isn't it really cool? Well,
Yeah.
what's really interesting is that, like, this isn't the first time we've heard about, humanoids that are, put here. And, well, he would probably be the most famous, if that is the case, if he is, some type of alien. But, it really, to me, the first thing that I thought of reading about it was Injured Cold. And, I thought that was very interesting. So I really do want to sit down. Obviously, now I need to, because this is what I do for, this is what I've chosen. But now I need to sit down and go through all 64 pages, and then also read this lady's book, and, figure out what, I guess, come to some type of conclusion, or maybe there's a connection in there. I'm not really sure, but it is very exciting.
I would have to check this, because some of this shit's signed by J. Edgar Hoover. And, like, I don't know. This is either like the craziest shit in the world, or this is completely fucking made up.
So I heard about it from a very credible source, I will say, one that I've been able to trust forever. And then, like, as you can see, you can pull the documents. So, but where are
Yeah.
you pulling the documents from? I need to go to the actual.
The vault, FBI.gov.
So it's then it's from the government.
It's on the government's website. Yeah.
So, I mean,
But that's what I'm saying. Like, this is completely fucking insane.
it's wild. Yeah, you're right. It is. It is.
Unless I'm reading it wrong, because that's the thing. I'm scanning through it
real quick. Sure. Well, sure. That's why, again, it's 64 pages. It's not crazy long, but still, quite a bit.
No, it looks like they're filing on him, because it covers different things, and it talks about his death in New York, and there's the police report from his death, and then something about the alien property custodian, and oh geez, there's so much in here.
Yeah, I've never heard about
yeah.
it. I don't know when this was declassified. I would like to figure that out.
And it says part 3 of 3. I don't know when it was declassified either. But yeah. Oh, well, no, it's 1982, 7/12/82.
Was when it was
I don't know.
declassified?
Yeah, the very first page is like the envelope, and it says, if this was like a manila envelope, there's a stamp that says all information contained herein is unclassified, date 7/12/82, by, and then it gives a name.
So we talked about this previously, about how there's all these declassified records that nobody's really sat down and combed through.
Sure.
Because we're talking about, this is the 80s. If this came out in the 80s, this information came out then, why are we just now, kind of, I mean, and I'm not saying that just because I'm just now learning about it means that, nobody knew about it before. I didn't discover anything, but, there is a lot of weird talks when it comes to Tesla. At least I've always heard weird things about him, but I've never really I haven't heard this with this much proof.
Right.
I've never like heard anything that had any type of anything to back it up. And so this is like the first time that I've heard about. So, I mean, that definitely does give some type of credence to the fact that there are these documents out there. They're in our face. We just don't know where to look for them, or how to look for them, or what to do. And, that's why things kind of go under, fly under the radar. So, but I thought that was really cool. Like I said, we should probably do an entire episode on it.
I would totally be down.
And just do a whole talk on Tesla.
Yeah, can we talk about something that I came across this week, and I had emailed it to you?
Yeah, please, yes.
and I'm looking for it now, but I can't find it. I don't know if I texted it to you.
You,
The
you read it.
the Antarctica, the Russian scientist that defected.
Let me pull it
So back in, oh geez, so back in like 2015, Russian scientists were digging a hole in Antarctica that was supposed to go all the way down to like this frozen lake at the bottom of like this huge glacier, right? And the lake was trapped under ice, and they expected to find some kind of life forms down there, right? And because there was air, but it was a self-contained ecosystem that hadn't been kind of poked at in millions and millions of years, supposedly, which we'll get to in a second, whether or not that's even possible.
Sure.
So, so the Russian scientists, drill this hole 2 miles down. They find access to this underground cavern with water in it. They go down there, and they lose contact with some of the scientists. They come up, they seal the hole, and they leave, right? And this is what the world knows, and this is what everybody knows happened, right? Well, recently, within this year, one of those scientists defected to the United States. And the reason he defected to the United States is because he says that while the Russian scientists were in that underground cave, they came across a very highly intelligent, malicious life form that was kind of like a giant squid, and that it lived in the cave. They battled with it for a couple days. Several people died, and the rest of the team was able to escape, and they sealed off the hatch. But that the Russian government was getting ready to go back in there because they wanted to try to retrieve this life form and weaponize it. So that was why the scientists had defected to the United States. And this was something this was a story that appeared on the internet about a week ago, right?
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine send it to me, and he sent it to me via Yahoo News, right? Which seems somewhat credible. But when I went to the link, the link took me to a third-party site. And the more that I looked into this story, the more that, it was there, but it always seemed to link back to look back to the original story. I wasn't finding too many different variations of this story, right? And like I'm looking at it right now, I just found it. It's on Yahoo News, right? But it always goes back to this original video. So that's a little bit suspect. And honestly, the only other thing that kind of makes you question it is because it's such a good story. It seems like something that's literally right out of a horror movie. Like it's got twinges of like Lovecraft and the
Yeah.
thing
Oh,
in
yeah.
it.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
But like, this story broke like literally 2-3 days ago. So this is very new. So you should look into it. Look at Russian scientist defects with tale of subantarctic battle with strange creature, and it'll kind of give the gist of it, and then it'll link to this YouTube video that details it. Now the scientists that they name in it, the names that they give are all legit, right? But Russian scientists being Russian scientists, it's not exactly like they got Facebook pages where you can, they have disappeared. They're not readily available. They're Russian scientists. So whether or not they actually defected or anything, the average person with, using Google Foo is not going to be able to tell. But definitely check that out because it's a very interesting story. And the details that they give about, the octopus battle and everything, if nothing else, it's something interesting to
So when I
get
went
high and listen
back
to.
to try to look and reference the article that you had sent me, you emailed it to me. It's not on there anymore.
Huh.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, but it is under. I found it on MSN.
Yeah, I mean, it got picked up and passed around.
So you'll have
But
to Google it, right? You have to Google
yeah,
it. It's there, but yeah, for whatever reason, Yahoo has removed that. So that's interesting.
yeah,
That
it's
was cool.
it's something cool. It's like I said, who knows if it's true or not? But
I think that is pretty cool. I thought you were going to talk about the graph that you sent me.
Oh well, yeah, we can get into the show topic proper. That's a good one. Yeah, that graph, I absolutely love that graph.
I
And if
do agree with that. That graph is a good one to kind of slide into the main attraction. But yeah,
okay,
posted this cool graph here, and it's
from the
basically
Washington Post.
yeah, it's really cool. Apparently they did this study about like general American beliefs, and like the beliefs are usually like 40 beliefs, like most people, it seems, believe that they can influence the world with positive mental attitude is what one of my substitute teachers used to call it, but basically positive thoughts, law of attraction.
And I read that as the power of prayer.
It could be
You
the
know what I
power of,
mean? Like
well,
that, not necessarily,
the power of
not
prayer is still law of attraction.
right, but not necessarily putting it in religious terms, because I think people would might link that too strongly with Christianity. But yeah, the most widely held paranormal belief, what they deem as a paranormal belief, is that you can influence the physical world via positive thought.
Yeah,
And that was about 65, almost 70% of Americans believed in that.
believe that.
Americans polled, yeah.
Right. But yeah, the ones polled believe in that. So I mean that is the most wildly believed things. And then
But
but
coming in
you
hot at
know
number two,
what's that?
what's coming in hot at number two, like right behind it?
Oh yeah, that's yeah. Number two is right behind that is people believe in advanced civilizations like Atlantis existed. Um, so does that mean I'm going through it now? Well, I guess there's like UFOs and stuff, so it wouldn't be like alien activity. It would be like ancient civilization. Is that right?
But what's interesting that they believed ancient civilizations like Atlantic once existed is that, see, some of these, and this is kind of a little bit more of an abstract conversation, is that, like, okay, so 60% of Americans polled, a little bit over 60, believed in advanced civilizations like Atlantis once existed.
Right.
But if you go down further, there's a smaller percentage that that believes that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Right.
Right.
So there's a smaller person, and there's a greater percentage that believes in creationism, which is what the topic of today is. So there's more people that believe that more. If you were to poll people, there's more people that believe that God created man in his uh, the way that we look. That, like, don't believe in evolution. That believe in creationism.
Right.
Right. That number's at about 40%. But so that those people think the Earth is like 6,000 years old. So more people believe in like Atlantis, which is kind of weird. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That
Yeah. More people believe in it. More people believe in UFOs. Than they
right.
believe, those things. So but it can be. I mean, then again, I think that in America, which I think some people would argue about it, but I think in America, people are starting to question Christianity, and I think it's starting to kind of be a thing of the past. At least, it's going to be a very slow progression for that to happen, but you see it already. Plenty of people are like, "Well, I believe in God, but I don't believe in the God or whatever." You know what I mean? So like, a
Well,
lot of people have that attitude. Whereas, like, you don't really have as many people that believe in the Bible is law, and it's dictated directly. It's meant to be taken literally. Um,
well, that's I think, yeah, because and that's it's kind of like this week's topic is creationism, and kind of how this dovetailed into last week as we were talking about dinosaurs and
Dinosaurs,
living
right?
dinosaurs, and the thing is that if you're a kind of a devout Christian, then you don't think that the Earth is more than 6,000 years old. And it's just some information on that. That number was actually, the Irish get to take credit for that. It was an Irish archbishop in the 17th century that did the math and went through the Bible and added up everyone's dates, and so begat so and kind of like backwards engineered it and came up with the date Saturday, October 22nd, 4004 BC, is supposed to be at 6 p.m. I don't know how they got the time. I don't know how they got the time, and I don't know if that's Eastern Standard Time, if that's Asher's time or Pato's time, because me and you were in different time zones. I
Right.
don't know. I don't know what time zone the Garden of Eden was on,
But it's 6
but
p.m.
6 p.m. Saturday, October 22nd. So the birthday's coming up. We have like
I
the
know it's going to be the Earth's birthday.
I know Saturday, October 22nd, 4004 BC. So that's if you take the Bible as a literal document and go back.
That's pretty
That's
cool, actually.
yeah. Some guy figured that out. Some Irish guy who had
Some
way too
guy,
much fucking time.
he's got a
Way too much
name for
fucking. Well, this was 17th century. So there was no TV. There's no podcasts.
that.
There's nothing
You
else
just
for
look
him to
on
do.
Google and it's like some guy.
He's got like 2 books.
Who
It's
cares?
like
He
you know
calculated how old the Earth is. Who cares who
he,
he is? He doesn't
he's
deserve
got
a
like
name.
he's got like Beowulf in his copy of the Bible, and that's it. He's already read Beowulf for the 19th fucking time, so he decides to start writing shit down in the Bible. So,
But that is pretty cool. I mean, it's cool, I guess, that he did something like that, because that does, it makes you question things, I guess. If you really do believe that the Bible is law and that's what you follow, then why wouldn't you believe the timeline when it's constructed?
right, but the problem with that is that then now, not once you start shading things in, and you start to like, okay, there's a loose outline for things. Now we're coloring in the lines. Now
Yeah.
we're making things more definite, and we're giving more shape and body and structure to things. That's when it can either be right or wrong, right? Because now you've given a date to it, and anything that differentiates from that date, anything that suggests that something exists from before 4004 BC, 6,000 years ago, it's heresy. You know what I mean? And that's where you get that conflict between science and religion. For
Right.
some people, I don't think it's necessary, but some people do, and that's why when you talk about the decline of Christianity in the United States these days, I think that the problem is that you have these hardline people that can't think bilaterally. They can't understand like the nuanced viewpoint. They got to be left or they got to be right. You got to be Republican and you got to be Democrat. Not turning to politics, but and to realize that there's shades of gray to things. That's too complicated. It's too much mental gymnastics for some people.
Well, that was exactly the conversation I was having with my mom earlier today, actually. Because that's all we talk about basically is the coronavirus and the election, and how basically, like, we were talking about people that hate Trump. I think any logical person knows that he's a bad person, and
Mhm. Well,
but
I disagree with you. We'll get to that next, but go on. I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay. Well, just because he's a bad person doesn't mean that you're pro Biden. It doesn't mean that you are all of a sudden you're Democrat or anything like that. I mean, there's a difference there, and like you're allowed to have opinions and like not support something in your party and still be part of that party. And and just like the virus, like you're allowed to like question things and stuff like that, without be going totally off the rails and be like, oh, it's some deep state new world order conspiracy and blah 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 blah. Like you're allowed to question things. Nobody's saying that you can't, but nobody really cares about the gray area. People just stay in the black or the white. Well,
Right.
maybe not for the most part. I'll be honest. I talk to a lot of people. I meet a lot of people usually, and stuff like that. And I'd say most people are decent people. Most people accept that there's gray areas, but then you do have the extremists that don't. And then, so I feel the same way when it comes to like religion. I'm not really religious. I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. I think that it would be, to me, it's absolutely absurd to think that everything was created by a singular God or even gods in general. And I think that there could be what we think are gods, but they're not really gods. They're just interdimensional species and they're just on a different plane than we are. So therefore, we would idolize them as gods. But I don't think that, I don't really go in line with any type of specific viewpoints as far as religion goes. I mean, I'm a witch. Everybody knows that. And even then, I'm an eclectic witch. I don't follow the rules of any of Wicca or anything specific. Um, so, I mean, because I have that gray area, because I can take from certain things and go, oh, this makes sense for me. This resonates with me. So I'm going to use it because that makes sense. Um,
Mhm.
But that's my personal, that's my personal religious journey. That doesn't mean that I think that anybody else is wrong for their own personal journey, because again, it's very personal. Um, my only issue is when it starts interfering with fact and when it starts interfering with other people's lives. That's kind of my thing. So when you talk about creationism, uh it interferes with science a lot, and but they've accounted for that, right? Well, okay, so there's different theories. Let's start from the beginning here. Let's start with dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are kind of a new thing. We really didn't know that about dinosaurs until like the 19th century is when we started like accepting that there was dinosaurs.
1824. Yeah.
Oh, it was the early 19th century. Look at you and your facts and stuff. I love it.
I take this guest hosting spot very seriously. I want to make sure that I do my homework for this shit. You get the emails from me Sunday night. I wait till the last minute, but I'm still doing it. Yeah.
I know you do. I'm like, oh wow, look, he's got some, and I'm so shitty. I never even respond. And I'm like,
I don't care. It's fine.
And then I don't. And I'm like, God damn it.
It's all good.
Such an asshole. But anyway, I'm a bad boss. I'm sorry.
Please continue.
But anyway, so what I was saying was, the dinosaurs are pretty new, and so you got two sides to this with creationism. You have a side of people that think that dinosaurs never existed at all, ever. Mm-hmm. And then you have a side of people that think that dinosaurs lived alongside man.
Right.
Right. So I was talking about, I mentioned going to we have a creationist museum. Did you double check to see if that was the same museum that we both have?
No.
Okay. That's
I flaked too. Sorry.
It's irrelevant. I didn't get to go. Unfortunately, I had other stuff. But, so a friend of mine, this was like 2 weeks ago. A friend of mine was like telling me about the Creationist Museum, and Creationism Museum, and she was showing me pictures of it and stuff. And it's kind of like adorable and hilarious because they have like cages like set up, like so it's shaped like Noah's Ark, and like so you go in, and it's presented as if you're in the Ark, and so they've got like these cages, and there's like fucking sheep and pig in the same cage as like these little baby dinosaurs, and
right,
it's fucking ridiculous, and it's like I said, it's adorable, but it's ridiculous, and so there's two sides to it. Which one should we cover first? Do we want to cover them living alongside us, or do we want to cover the fact that they're not real at all?
Well, let's do. I'm more familiar with the living alongside. The not real at all, I think, is a much smaller. Yeah, it's a much smaller portion of the creationism community that suggests that they weren't real at all.
Well, then maybe we should talk about that one first and kind of get it out of the way.
Okay, all right. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah. So yeah, there's people that think that they didn't exist. I have this guy, and he's, sadly, fucking ironically, he's a producer for a very big film company, one that worked on Jurassic World, and we were talking about dinosaurs, and he's like, well, how do you know dinosaurs existed? I'm like, well, because we have the bones and stuff. And he's like, but have you ever seen a dinosaur? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, when it comes to the bones and stuff, how do you know that those didn't belong to something else? Like in the Bible, they talk about giants and all these other creatures and things like that. And I'm like,
right, which we've never seen either, but go on.
Right. Sure. But I think his point was that, because I haven't seen what those bones once encased, how do I know that it's a dinosaur? How do we know it is as old as it is? And I mean, that's a good point. If I was a total moron, like, and I didn't really know anything about the stuff, which like, I kind of don't know anything about it. I really don't know how carbon dating works exactly, but I know that we have carbon dating. So like, I have enough knowledge to know that like, there is a way for us to know, that these things are old and stuff like that. So, but it was a good point. He did present some pretty decent points, and then you go and you look into it, and it's like, well, I just don't know. There's like fake dinosaurs that like we've constructed out of bones that ended up, we dug from sites that were multiple dinosaurs together. We dug them up.
We've been proven wrong in the past because we never find full skeletons. You're finding things, and you say, okay, well, if the thigh was this big, then we know that the foot was like this, and you know what I mean? Like, if you could find enough, and you can backwards engineer it and kind of put it
Well, even
together.
going back to like the Thunderbirds episode, one thing that I'd read about researching it was, when I was looking up the the pterodons and how they were, there's another species of pterodon out there. And or I'm sorry, family of pterodon out there. And it's the biggest one. And I didn't mention it because it's so new. We kind of just discovered it. We don't have all the bones to it to know. And so I didn't feel right mentioning it and presenting it as fact without having all the facts. So I mean, yeah, we find pieces of these incomplete animals all the time, and then we piece them together. So like we've been wrong, and we've created species that never did exist, and we're like, oops, that spine, that vertebrae went to this hip, actually. Um, so
Well, I
I
think
mean, oh, go ahead.
where the conspiracy part comes in is that, like, but that's a difference between, and this is something once again we talked about last show, we're like, or probably a bunch in the past, about how like science gets it wrong sometimes, and that's
Yeah,
why science theories evolve
sure.
over years, right? And what we thought was true back then, we now know isn't true now, and science keeps evolving as our understanding of the universe changes. So, but that's different because these people that think the dinosaurs never existed at all usually have the slant that it's a it's they call it like big paleo, is kind of created to undermine the Christian faith and make money selling fake fossils and stuff like
Right.
that.
Yes.
So
And
so that's different to where, and that's where sometimes you get, they're not just scientists, they're ethnic scientists that want to disprove
right.
Christ because they believe in a different religion that predates Christianity. Not to name names or anyone, but usually it's not just
That's what they
scientists;
go
it's
for.
Jew
Right.
scientists. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. That are
Right.
fucking using dinosaurs to disprove God, which is so crazy because there's so many people that I think never, that consider themselves to be Christian or consider themselves as people that believe in Jesus, that never at any point in their days stop to think about the contradiction between the existence of dinosaurs and the legitimacy of the Bible.
Right.
And I think there is a conflict there, but it's a conflict that flies over most people's heads. And it's just that, and
It's
once
something that
again,
they don't tie together. Right. Exactly.
right,
And
because you would never make that mental connection, and then when you do, you're like, oh, that's weird. Yeah, I guess you're right. That if the Earth was made in 7 days, where the fuck are the dinosaurs?
there's
Like,
all in science. Yeah.
but I mean, if you're kind of, and this kind of goes with, you know, uh, w- when you look at something like the Grand Canyon, right? And there was a New York Times article that I read, and it's called, if you guys want to Google it at home, it's called "Seeing Creation and Evolution in the Grand Canyon," and basically it's about these two groups of scientists that went on a rafting trip through the Grand Canyon. Well, it's not two groups of scientists; it's two groups that went on this rafting trip. One of them it's like a creationism faith-based group, and the other is a group of scientists, and they're both looking at the Grand Canyon and they're coming up with different explanations. And kind of going back to what you had brought up earlier, I think the explanation that people come up with is, one of the things that creationists say to defend their point of view is that it all depends on what your starting point is when you look at evidence, right? If you sit down and you have a scientific mindset, then when you look at a fossil, and this is something that we see in scientists, evidence, like, things change when we observe them, right? So when we look at evidence based on what we sit down and we expect to find, that can definitely influence our perception of the data that we receive. So when the scientists go in the Grand Canyon and they see this and they see, okay, well, this is, we can see the erosion lines and we can see this, and it looks like, oh, this was done over a long period of time and all this stuff. But a creationist will go into the Grand Canyon and say, oh, this was clearly caused by the Great Flood.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you, and that, I sent you a video, I think, for last episode, but it kind of had to do with that mentality,
Yeah.
but which was actually kind of racist. I don't know. Did you end up watching that video?
I don't.
Because
I don't think so. I think
the
if it was
scientist,
racist, I would have known.
Yeah, it was from one of these creationism museums, and
Oh,
that was their explanation. And it showed a paleontologist like digging up dinosaur bones, and the guy that was the talking head in the video was like, it's all about your starting point. And if you start with the Bible as the cornerstone, then any information that you take in, you can put in the context of the Bible, and it all makes sense. But if you don't, if you take this information and you don't have the Bible to start with, then you're going to come up with different theories that will inevitably be wrong. And then when it says that, it cuts to a picture of the scientist and like they're Chinese. So it's like,
wow.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. And it was like, the talking head guy is like this British, like, wasp, like, totally like Anglo dude that's like, but when you have the Bible, then when you see these dinosaurs, you think of the behemoth from the book of Job, or
Yeah.
Leviathans that swallowed Jonah, and blah, 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 blah,
Right.
you know. But if you're not, if you're a godless communist, if you're a
You're
godless like
Chinese.
scientist or Chinese, and I just felt bad
Wow.
about like the person that had to pretend to be a paleontologist in this
That
video.
sucks.
Like
I know.
they answered a casting call, and they were like, "Oh,
That's what
perfect."
I was gonna say. It
And you're
says
like, the guy's probably like, "I just want my fucking SAG card.
you
Like, I can't
must
even
be
give a shit."
Chinese.
Yes.
So okay, so going back to what you were saying about the starting point and all that, I really want to bring up this, and this I think the best time to do it. Have you heard of the mammoth cyclops?
No.
So the mammoth cyclops. So when they were first kind of starting out and discovering, digging up all these bones and stuff like that, they found this huge skull, and it had this cutout, in the head region where the eye would be, and it was just a single eye socket. There was no other, eye socket to it, and when they saw this
Ooh.
thing, they were like, oh my, this is obviously, we've had cyclopses, they existed. Um, but it wasn't a cyclops at all. It was just a woolly mammoth skull.
Hmm.
Right. And we didn't know that initially. At first, we thought it was a giant cyclops. That's a true story. And, now we know, once we found I think we ended up finding another specimen, or maybe we found teeth to match the skull. And, then we ended up realizing what it really was. It was just a giant elephant. Um, it made sense then. So you see,
Right.
someone can,
It's the nasal cavity. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, it's the nasal cavity
right, right.
from. Because I'm looking at pictures of it now.
There's that big hole. Yeah, the mammoth
Right.
cyclops. And so that's what we thought it was. We didn't know. We had no idea. And so, with new information and over time and new technology and new advances, those things are subject to change. Look at dinosaurs now. I think we kind of mentioned it talking about, maybe we didn't, but talking about, back in 93, the amazing Jurassic Park came out and, shook everybody. I think that was 93, right? Um,
Yeah, but then.
and shook everybody, and we saw these awesome dinosaurs and great CG and puppets. um but now those same dinosaurs, those velociraptors, we're finding out probably had feathers. They were probably giant chickens, and they kind of said that in the movie. But our perception of dinosaurs has always been giant scaly reptilian things. But now we're finding out that, well, they probably did have fur and feathers, and they probably looked a lot normal than we thought they did. So we've come a long way, and 90s kids like myself, and 1920s kids like Pat, um, it's hard to accept that dinosaurs had fur and feathers.
No,
They
I
did.
knew that. In fact, I wasn't going to disagree with you, but since you're being a bitch about it, I guess I better. I want to say when Jurassic Park came out, it was already kind of established that raptors probably had feathers, and but that for the sake of the movie,
They
they
made a
weren't being
story out
shown
of it.
like that. I want to take it a step further and say I want to say by the time Jurassic World came out, there's a throwaway line in there when the Indian CEO goes to visit Dr. Henry Wu, and he says something about if we used your amber if we used the DNA in the amber to really reproduce these dinosaurs, they wouldn't look at all like what your patrons want to see in the park. And he mentions feathers. Like at this point, that's kind of like yeah, it's not common knowledge because we obviously when we see them in movies, they're still they look the way they look. But
Well,
yes,
I
I
mean,
knew
that's just
about the
probably the best
feathers.
example that I can think of. I mean, just going down to, figurines and hell, that show, the dinosaurs, they all looked very, again, reptilian, like big dragon
Scaly, yeah.
things. And they weren't
Right.
that way, they weren't really that way. And like I said, even now, as we can see with the progression of time, there's no new, there's like stupid kid shows out. Like there's one, it's called Dinosaur Train. And I don't know, you've got kids, you might have heard of it. But the dinosaurs in it aren't, scaly, or they're still scaly. They're not feathered and furred. And so it's like, obviously that's a hard reality for us to accept. So I mean, it takes time for us to change our perspective on things. Just like, well, realistically, like I was saying about Christianity, it takes time to change that as being the norm, because we're so comfortable with what we know. And that's the thing about science, is that you don't know anything for sure. Even when you think you still don't. So with these people and their creationism, you know, they aren't going to take, they're not going to take the answer that the earth is older than what they already know. They're not willing to bend on that. But is it possible? Is it possible that the earth is only 6,000 years old? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean
But we'll never
that.
live for 6,000 years to know, to see a whole cycle of it. You know what I mean? So how can we
Yeah,
even dispute that?
I think what you have to do is you have to look at evidence, and what you have is you have one book that says one thing,
Right.
and you have a whole mountain of evidence that suggests something different. And not just talking about paleontology, talking about astrophysics as well.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And kind of why I wanted to touch on this is because creationism is a byproduct of fundamental Christianity, which is a big part of our country's makeup. Even if people don't really necessarily look at the ingredients on the Kool-Aid they're drinking,
Right.
it is. And you might have people that kind of like, well, just the same way, I have Jewish friends that eat bacon and don't give a fuck, and I have Christian people, I have Catholic friends that use birth control, and I know plenty of people that identify as Christian but still don't go to church every Sunday, or get divorced or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, people aren't necessarily devout and follow the letter of the law to everything that they
Right.
do. And I think the creationism thing is an interesting part of that, because it's a very integral part of the faith, but a
Right.
lot of people kind of sweep it aside, and they treat these religions like, a buffet where you're going to pick what you want. You know what I mean? Well, I'll take the egg rolls, but I'm going to leave the short ribs behind.
Right.
And that's something that if you really believe in the faith, I almost have more respect for fundamentalists that are very hardline and or all or nothing, because at least then they're really believing it.
They
You know what I
really
mean?
do. Right. They have
The,
to. Right.
no,
In order to
it's
do that.
it's the people that kind of like, oh, well, I believe,
Mhm.
that to me always seems like they're just taking the path of least resistance, and they're prescribing their spirituality and their worldview based on whatever is the amount of effort that they want to put in.
Yeah.
And that to me doesn't seem very well thought out, because the world and science and all that adheres to stricter values than just whatever you feel like fucking
Right.
effort you feel like
Exactly.
putting in at the time, right?
Yeah.
But the reason I want to bring this up though is because the people that do believe, and kind of how the genesis for the show kind of tied into flat earthers as well, which I know we're not going to do a show on, but I've always respected people that believe in conspiracies that big, right? People that think that the fucking earth is flat, or that the
Yeah.
fucking earth is 6,000. The dinosaurs are a fucking lie, man. They're screwing with you. Fuck the Grand Canyon, fuck astrophysics. None of that shit is real. We are not fucking stardust. Everything is wrong. The earth is 6,000 years old, and everything that you believe about dinosaurs is a fucking lie. Like, the Jurassic World movies are a byproduct of fucking Hollywood because they're Satanists and they want to make shoes out of our kids. Like people that go in that fucking deep, I'm like, all right, dude. Like, I'll listen to you. You have my attention. And why the graph I thought was so interesting is because it breaks down, like, I love to see like what people believe in
Yeah.
and what people think they're being lied to about. Like, I love, like, one of the things on this graph, just going back to it real quick, is that 50% of the people, and this is one of the highest. So where organized religion works its way into this graph at several different points, but you have something like that says like 50% of the people believe that Satan causes the most evil in the world.
Yeah.
50% of
Yeah.
the people believe in Satan.
Right.
How accurate do you think that statement really is, though?
Well, so it just depends. How did they pick their group? I don't think I read that far into it to know. What demographic was it? Obviously, you're gonna have a different demographic living in LA compared to living in, BFE, West Virginia,
Uh,
or
uh,
just even West Virginia, so
but don't you think do you think that people in LA are more or less likely to believe in Satan?
less likely.
Less? Okay.
Right,
I didn't
right.
know if you were going to suggest they were Satan worshiping fucking low men
No, 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 no.
that,
What
that
I'm saying is that
bathe
people in
in
West
blood.
Virginia most likely believe in Satan.
Right.
I shit on West Virginia a lot. I should, because everybody in West Virginia is
You
pretty
spend so much
fucking
time there. That's like your
I
second home.
do. Yeah.
But I think there's a difference between like saying, yes, I believe in it versus, okay, it's real. And how many people believe in actual possessions? Like, I think that number would be lower, and this kind of, I mean, this goes
I
back
think
even
that number would
further.
be higher.
This goes back even further to like the UFO conversation, the episodes that we did were like, you may say that you may take a poll and you find out that 70% of the people in the world believe in UFOs, right? But do you think that 70% of the world would be receptive if you said you had a sighting? I don't think they would, right? I think people, like, if you ask them, like, oh, yeah, do you believe in God? Yeah, I believe in God. Okay, well, I talked to him. Well, no, that can't be true. Why not? Well, because it just can't be. Like, you must be crazy. Okay, but you believe in him, right? Yeah, but he doesn't actually, there's no proof of him. You know what I mean? It's such a weird, like, 50% of the people believe in Satan. Okay, when you go to those people and you try to say, okay, I have proof or I had an experience or there's something like this, I guarantee you that same 50%, that number would be a lot higher people that actually believe you.
Yeah, probably only 10% would believe you. That's true. That's a good point. But I think that the problem with it is that most people don't think. I mean, that sounds really bad because, of course, people have their own opinions and things like that, but they don't really look that much into things. That's why you have the people that cherry pick the religions or, whatever, because they really don't look that much into them to really even know. How many Christians have actually read the Bible? Not many, I can tell you that.
I mean, it's funny you bring that up. I have probably read it 4 times now. I really do. And the reason that I do it is because every year I read it because I have an app on my phone that like spits out like a handful of passages or something,
Oh,
and I'll just listen to it on my way to work or whatever. And the reason I do it though is because it gets thrown around so fucking much that I feel like there's so many people that act like they're well versed in it that aren't,
yeah,
that do that because they know that the person that they're talking to has never fucking picked it up once in their life.
right.
You know what I mean? But I've read the Apocrypha, I've read the Quran, I've read the Book of Mormon. Like I read constantly. So like religious books and stuff like that. That it's not all I read. I also read like Stephen King and shit. But like, um, that's definitely my rotation. That stuff. So yeah, I've read it, and I usually read it so I can shut people the fuck up if I have to in an argument. You know,
Well, right. A lot of people they'll take scripture out of context all the time and use it for whatever it is they need to use it for. But like the fact of the matter is that they took it out of context. So
right?
because they didn't read it, like one thing which I'm not gonna to get too heavy into, but it's like this the Bible's stance on abortion, and it mentions the story of Jesus and how he basically said that everybody that teaches kids, or what was it exactly? Everybody that teaches kids the wrong way here should go to hell. And somehow this has been used for abortion, and all it means is that anybody that has a child that's not raising them to believe in God is damned to go to hell. And it's like, how did that get twisted up into this?
And
It's
and I,
and I don't know exactly what it is, but um,
And I
you know,
mean, and honestly, just for as much as I read it, the original context, and I don't know exactly what portion you're referring to,
right,
but he was probably condemning the hypocrisy of the fucking church at the time,
right,
which was like very strict and like I mean, he got killed because he was performing miracles on the Sabbath.
right,
Like that's how ridiculous, which is crazy because that's the kind of church that we have today, which like doesn't give a shit about homeless people, doesn't give a shit
right.
about once the child, they're so protective of like life, up until conception, then they don't give a shit, and they have no they make no effort to fucking support these people or take care of these people.
Right.
They don't want health care. They don't want public aid. They, but at the same time, I don't know. It's just whatever, man. I think it's the exact stuff that he was fucking flipping over tables in the temple over.
Right. Well, right. But again, it's just they took one line out of that and was like,
Right,
here, it's about this. And it's like, no, it's not about that at all, actually.
right.
Did you read it all, or did you just read that one line, or so it's like, and most likely what happened was they actually saw that line somewhere on Facebook in somebody else's argument, and they're like, oh, I could use that. They didn't even think to look into it enough to know for sure what it was talking about. And so, and that's how you get these things. That's how you end up with most people run on autopilot. I mean, gosh, there's so much, I know, because I'm kind of I don't know, a motivational speaker in a way. I'm very much live in the moment, live to the fullest, take the risks, do all that. And most people aren't that. Most people are they work and they go home and they eat and they shit and they sleep and that's it. And we know that. We're aware as a culture, we're aware that that happens. And so, that's obviously then we're going to apply that to everyday life. Somebody reads an article somewhere about this edgy scientist, which ends up not being a scientist at all, has discovered that, dinosaurs are only as old as we are and we're only 6,000 years old. So they read that article and then they take it and they run with it instead of actually looking into the science of it, instead of actually questioning everything and really looking into it. They just take it at face value. And that's a problem. So then you do have people, well, then again, I guess, these people, these creationists, they typically are born into that, usually. You don't usually find believers that were born into other religions or anything, unless they're born into another very extreme religion like that, where they're kind of used to the brainwashing. I don't know. But it starts off young and then they take it. But like you said, I mean, hell, you got to have some respect for them, because at least they stick to the guns then. At least then they know that that's what they believe in and they stick to it.
I find it interesting from a psychological standpoint, because I like to look at the reason why I'm so drawn to this stuff, because this is probably going back to our first conversation. There's so many people that are into conspiracies and the paranormal that are just fucking schizophrenic, and I just want to hope that I'm not one of those people. So when I see people that are more going the creationism thing, you have both sides yelling conspiracy against the other. Because in this case, conspiracy has to do with suppression of data, right? And you have the creationists saying that the scientists are suppressing data that supports their cause, and then the scientists are saying, well, if you want to talk about the suppression of science, no one's more guilty of that than the fucking Catholic Church over the past couple hundred years.
Yeah.
And if you look at the flat earther thing, which is kind of like tangent to all this, I mean, they're yelling suppression of data too. Everyone thinks that someone else is pulling the wool over their eyes.
Right.
And that's kind of what all these conspiracies have in common. And the big ones, the ones about, I'm not talking about whether or not who shot Kennedy, because I mean, as much as I don't want to downplay that, but that's a relatively small conspiracy in the grand scheme of things. But when you talk about the big ones, the ones about the very fabric of reality,
Right.
and look, the earth is fucking flat and there's people that are lying to us, or the earth is 6,000 years old and there's people that are lying to us, or the earth is 8 billion years old and there's people that are lying to you, trying to tell you that it's 6,000 years old, and what are their motives, and it becomes all so fucking dramatic and back and
Right.
forth. That's the stuff that I think it piques my interest. And I'm that Michael Jackson eating popcorn in the movie, from the Thriller video, GIF, like sitting there just like, I don't want someone to see how this shit plays out. I find that very interesting from a psychological standpoint, because I think you're really getting into something fundamental about us as a species, that we are very distrustful about the nature of reality. We're very, and sometimes we're wrong, but it's like something's up.
Right.
And I think you see it, man, different people, that suspicion, that disbelief, it manifests itself in different ways. The explanations that we cling to, those are different. You know what I mean? But the one thing that all of this have in common is that most of us think that we're being lied to. And most of us think that there is an organized effort to suppress information about reality.
That's true. That's
And
true.
that to me is what I find fun. If you want to all this shit, if this is my fucking thesis statement for my tenure as your co-host with this fucking podcast, that is my that to me is what interests me about all of this stuff is the human instinct to disbelieve reality and to think that there's something more that's being kept from us.
That's
Because I
true.
think there's some.
I just never thought about about it that way. That we actually have much more in common than we might than I might have thought previously. So
Well, it's the suspicion that links us all, and we, like I said, we argue about different things, and we cling on to different explanations, and we denounce other people's explanations. But I think what the unifying aspect is really what's the most telling is that we all kind of think that at some point on some level we're all saying this is bullshit.
kind of deep, Pat. That's kind of deep.
I have those moments. I do. Occasionally, they fucking wiggle their way out of me.
Through what hole?
All of them. There's no such thing as a wrong hole.
Gosh, I've been coming up with some great porns lately. I don't know. Anyway, so no, that is a really good point. Because that is really interesting. Just to get to the meat of it, really. It does come down to that. You're right. We all have some type of suspicion about something somewhere. I mean, it's kind of natural to have that distrust. For whatever reason. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's a learned behavior, or do you think that it's just biological?
No, I mean, shit. Look at what we're going through. So just to make this slightly political for a second is one of the huge things. And I'm not passing judgment. I want to alienate any of your listeners. But one of the things that obviously happened this week that was huge was the Trump's tax returns got released by the New York Times. And what was interesting for me was to listen to the different sides perceive the same information and say different things. And it was really enlightening. Well, I won't say it's enlightening because it didn't necessarily catch me off guard. I kind of fucking knew it was going to go like that. But it comes back to what your starting out point is. There's a video of Rush Limbaugh talking about how all of the Trump's tax return stuff prove is that he's a savvy businessman, right? And that he wouldn't have been able to do that. Hey, we have the IRS to arrest people that do this stuff illegally. And never mind the fact that he's been running the IRS for the past 4 years. But if he did do anything wrong, then the IRS would have nailed him for it. They didn't, so he must have done everything right. And then on the left, you have people saying, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is the nail in the coffin. He's done. And really, I don't think this information changes anyone's point of view. I think that the people that hated him have even more reason to hate him now, and the people that are behind him will explain this however they're going to explain it. And maybe, could it cost him a few votes? I mean, I'm not a political strategist. I don't know.
Maybe there's an accountant out there somewhere that's like
right. But unless you're like, I honestly don't think that that many people are going to change lanes. I think they have their default viewpoint and they're in whatever lane they're in, and that's all it is. And when new information gets thrown their way that conflicts with what they already believe, they just think that it's a conspiracy. Like, oh, this is just the left media trying to fucking tank him right before the election. And, oh, of course the tax returns come out a month before the election. How well was that staged? New York Times, it's supposed to be the press. This press is supposed to be unbiased, but look at this blatant attempt to cost him the election, right? And so they think it's a conspiracy on their part. And then you have the left, which already thought that this guy was, now they think that well, look at how much money he owes. He's compromised as a leader. This means that he has to be in bed with the Russians. Where is he getting all this money from? It's conspiracy. He was going to be bankrupt and blah, 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 but no one's really, I don't know.
So, I can condense that in a little better, in a different way.
Okay.
Like I said, my mom and I
were
talking about this. No. So we were talking about this, and one thing we were talking about was all these people think that the coronavirus is going to disappear once the election ends, right? And so we were talking about it, and her and I both know that it's not going to go anywhere because it's real, and
Yeah.
so we we're talking about it, and it's like, okay, so it's not going to disappear. Say Trump wins. If Trump wins, then it's going to be, oh, the left is just driving it because they're mad because they lost and blah 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 blah. If Biden wins, it's going to be, oh, the left is just using it to try to control you and blah 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 blah. And so at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because these people are going to try to rationalize it anyway because they have decided to stick to their guns and believe in that one thing that they've decided to believe in. So it doesn't matter what evidence you present. You're never going to change that person's mind.
Right.
And that's it basically. And so, this can be applied to a lot of things. So like even with the creationists, you can have new scientific evidence that come out. Maybe we even fucking clone a dinosaur. We take it up to their goddamn museum and they're like, oh, that's, fake or whatever.
It was obviously created in a laboratory. I mean, that's
Right.
where
We made it. It's our construction. Right. And
right.
so, they will find some type of way to reason away what it is. And that's because they have chosen to just so vehemently stick to their guns and stick to what they know. And, man, that sucks. That's sad.
Yeah, I mean, not only because I think it's a two-parter, man. Not only do we believe what we believe, but we're convinced that anyone with dissenting information is trying to pull the wool over our eyes. They're trying to lie
Right.
to us,
Right.
and that's what's I think really halting us. And how we got to that point, I don't know. Is it because there's like this mass? Is it because we think so much it's bullshit that we really, our filter is so out of whack, we really don't know what to believe anymore, and we're just in this spin where we can't possibly evolve because we don't trust anything that comes our way, or that like vetting new information is so, which we did tonight, like when we talked about that Antarctica octopus in the fucking underground cave, like we were like, oh, this could be bullshit, but like we'll look into it. Same thing with the Tesla thing,
Right.
is that like it's not enough just to look at one website and have it say something and then you run off and okay, this is what I believe. But I mean, if all you're doing is being reassured of something that you already thought was true, how much deeper are you going to dig for information that already tells you that you were smart and you had it right in the first place? You're not going to dig that much deeper, right? You're
Well,
going to kind of just be like, oh, I knew I was right. See, this is what this
right. You're
headline
gonna
says.
find
I don't need to.
you're gonna get your dopamine hit. That's
Why am I going to spend 15 minutes trying to prove myself wrong?
right. Right.
But
Right.
that's the problem, though, is that then we kind of put ourselves in these echo chambers where all we do is just constantly reassure ourselves that whatever idea we had was right and that there's no new information coming in and nothing's changed. And and that's why we have such polarized viewpoints on things, and I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, but that is, but then that is what makes, some of us the good ones is because we can separate our own personal gain, for the truth or what we
Hmm.
would perceive as the truth. We don't have an issue questioning our own selves and changing that viewpoint. I've done it a couple of times already working on this documentary. It's happened. And as long as you can stay open-minded and clear-headed enough to be able to do that, you have to take your own personal emotions out of the equation with any and every single topic that you talk about. And so, and I try not to be that person. I really do try not to judge anybody for anything because that's not fair. It's not stuff that I
Yeah.
can prove or whatever. But I think that that's very important. And I think, it does make these groups dangerous, but I don't think these groups like the creationists are going away anytime soon. I think that even when the idea of creationism dies out, because I think eventually it will, um, one of these days there's going to be another crazy fucking group that's going to be like, oh, humans never existed or whatever. I don't know.
Well, the last poll that I had was a 2019 Gallup poll that said that 38% of Americans have a creationist view of human origins, and that number was down from 47% in 1999.
Right.
So in 20 years,
That's
it
falling out.
dropped.
Right.
Yeah, it dropped about 11%. But once again, kind of going back to a theme that we touched upon earlier, that poll doesn't necessarily throw out that 6,000 year number. Right. So like, I think the creationist view is kind of that, um, It was very specific on how they worded it too. It was like, do you believe that God created man? You had like three options, right? One is straight up evolution. Okay. Then the middle option is evolution, but with the touch of God in there, the hand of God. And then the third one was man created God in his current form. So we didn't evolve, right? And that was what 38% of people agreed to, which is down from 47%.
Right. Right. So
Okay.
eventually, but think about it. You said dinosaurs first appeared, what, in 1824?
Yeah, 1824.
Think about how fucking different the world was in 1824, 200 years ago. You know
Those
what I mean?
cowboys. Yeah.
Yes, it was just so, everything that we knew was so radically different than what we know now. So in another 200 years, we're going to have that. But I think that the crazy groups of people are still going to exist. I just think they're gonna go to different ideas and new things and whatever. I mean, how do they get to that point? Like I said, most of these people are born into it. So I mean, what are they going to do? But it's a game of telephone. The human existence is a game of telephone. We just continue to grow based on the talks that we do, and sometimes we grow in the right way, and some people don't. I don't know.
I,
But
I I had one more poll that I want to throw out real
oh,
quick.
please.
It's a Harris poll, and this is from 2009, which admittedly is 10 years ago, but it was good, and I wanted to include it for this reason. I had 40% of the people believing in creationism, 40%, 32% UFOs, 23% witches,
Oh, okay.
and 42% ghosts, which I thought was interesting, was that you had more people that believed in ghosts than believed in uh, intelligent design. Which once again, I feel like that number, like, how does that work? How do you have more people that subscribe to ghosts but don't believe? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's people
Well,
just saying yes as a knee-jerk reaction without really thinking about where their viewpoints are. Like, they said no to witches, but they said yes to ghosts, or they said no to creationism, but they said yes to ghosts. Why was ghosts the highest one on that list? Because doesn't that tie into the other two? But yet more people gave that credence than creationism, which is intelligent design, which is God, or which is the occult. But like, I don't know. That's what I mean. Like, I feel like people don't. It seems to be like a little inconsistent with people's beliefs are very inconsistent.
Well, I think that actually makes a lot of sense, because you don't have to believe in intelligent design to believe in ghosts, because you don't have to believe in an afterlife, because you could believe in something scientific like moving on to another dimension or residual energies being left over. So, and then you don't have to believe in the occult, or you don't have to believe in ghosts to believe in the occult. Typically, if you believe in witches, or then you believe in ghosts. Or typically, if you believe in intelligent design, you believe in ghosts. But you don't necessarily have to believe in those things to believe in ghosts, because there are other theories. So I mean, to me that makes sense.
Well, I believe in you.
You believe in me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad someone does. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. Well, on that note, on me getting my diddle daddled and being flattered, is there anything else we need to cover this week? I'm trying to. I thought I had something, but
I mean, if you did you go through your notes? I went through most of mine, I think.
yeah, for the most part. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't do notes a lot. I research the things, but um, usually I just put like dates and shit, because I'm bad about that, and even then I'm bad about that. I wanted to talk about for a second how the flat Earth theory and the creationism theory they kind of go hand in hand. A lot of
Oh, okay.
creationists believe in the flat Earth and subscribe to it, because it makes sense for them. The ones that don't believe in dinosaurs, actually, and a lot of flat earthers don't believe in dinosaurs. So it will be really fun. As of right now, the plan for next week is to talk about these really outlandish conspiracies. As much as I think creationism is very outlandish, believe it or not, there are worse ones.
Like what? Give me some hints.
Well, so flat Earth is going to be one of them.
Okay.
Because it's just so fucking bizarre. And then we'll probably talk about other things like uh, like simulation theory and things like that. Just
Yeah,
things that a lot of people don't subscribe to.
I would
Birds.
look
We can
forward
talk
to.
about birds not existing.
Is
Yeah,
that real? I've seen that
exactly.
meme. I have
Listen.
that meme on my phone because I send it to people like
Yeah.
it's like yeah, it's CIA and it's like something about avians. I don't know, but yeah, I thought that was a joke though. I didn't think that was really real.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Uh,
It was real to somebody. I think that's how it started, and then everybody was like, "Wow, this is so fucking ridiculous. Let's meme the hell out of it." So they did.
okay, oh, that works for me.
Well,
That I do
um,
look forward to looking into the simulation thing just because that's something that I hear talked about a lot, and I have a as much as like that. I have such a hard time believing this is a fucking video game. Like, there's something that just rings false to me about that. But I look forward to doing the legwork and actually looking into it.
well, I'm
Maybe I'll
going to talk
change my
about how
mind. Who
the
knows?
coronavirus is my fault. I've told you that before, but I'll talk about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I'll talk about that. I mean, it's the only time I can really ever talk about it. So, because it's just it is out there, but at the same time, it makes you go So, we'll talk about the coronavirus and how I'm to blame. But yeah, it'll be if you guys can think of any other like ridiculous theories that you've heard of or read about, please send them through. But
Sure.
we'll kind of have a variety show of really out there conspiracies. At least that's what I'm going to try to stick to anyway. And we'll talk about that stuff. So in the
Okay,
meantime,
cool.
I have a lot of Tesla to read about and see where that goes. So. But either way, all right, guys. Well, we will see you next Wednesday.